3 years ago, Liam and Amanda tied the knot. It's worth noting that Liam would never have married her if she hadn't become the sole owner of her own business after her father's sudden death. A stroke suddenly took the life of a man who seemed young and vigorous to everyone. Amanda, being his favorite and only daughter, inherited everything. After her mother passed away, Amanda became a beacon of hope for businessman Gerald Green. Following the death of his first wife, Amanda's mother, he preferred casual relationships with younger women. Naturally, Amanda inherited the entire fortune. Amanda didn't need the money, which is why Liam, a charming but aging playboy who lived off women, targeted her. If Amanda fell for the sweet promises of a seasoned womanizer and believed them without question, Liam, as always, planned to stick around until a better option came along. Turns out, Amanda was the best option, the jackpot of his life. After Gerald's death, her massive inheritance went straight to her, and Liam knew just how to use the money. Amanda fell head over heels in love. He thought he could easily control her and handle all the money and assets as he pleased. After Amanda's father passed away, Liam's plans took a sharp turn. He silently thanked his lucky stars for not leaving Amanda or doing anything that would have cut off his return. Everything was falling into place. Amanda was truly heartbroken. Her father was her rock and the most important person in her life. This became another win for Liam, who could twist any situation to his favor. He immediately showered the girl with care and attention, seeming to turn over a new leaf, or so it appeared to the unfortunate orphan, only to reveal his true self at a critical moment. The young and naive girl didn't realize that the most terrifying moment of her life, ironically, pushed her to bury her true personality even deeper. Up until the wedding, he kept his true nature hidden, behaving exceptionally well until there was no turning back. The marriage proposal came almost immediately after the funeral, but, of course, there was a period of mourning for her father. Liam excelled at lying, twisting the truth, pretending to be whoever he needed to be, and doing what was expected of him. Normally, he didn't put much effort into his wealthy girlfriends, figuring there'd always be another, so why bother? Even here, he was lazy and didn't want to go the extra mile, living by the motto, "That's how it goes." However, the stakes were high this time and the effort was worth it, and the crafty man understood that perfectly. He couldn't predict that the first problem would come out of nowhere. Gerald's best friend, who was also the deputy director of the company and Amanda's godfather, immediately realized he couldn't talk the girl out of marriage. The young, naive lady was head over heels in love. Moreover, she needed something to fill the void left by her father's death. Being smart and perceptive, he firmly insisted that the young couple sign a prenuptial agreement before tying the knot. Justin Ford, who had known his goddaughter much longer than the new groom, easily persuaded her. "Liam, it's necessary for business. Can't you just do it?" the girl gently insisted, echoing Justin's words. "It's insulting. Do you think I need your money?" The man was furious. This turn of events clashed with his plans. "Honey, it's just a simple formality, only in case of divorce. My godfather really wants us to sign a prenuptial agreement. He's always been like a second father to me, and now..." Liam wasn't the only one capable of manipulation in this relationship. She could do it too. She might never have worried about money, and maybe that made her a bit naive about financial matters, but she wasn't foolish. If she set a goal, she would achieve it no matter what. With such a framing of the issue and such arguments, Liam had no choice but to do as she asked. He had to accept all of Justin's conditions. The prenuptial agreement's wording was standard, but it completely cut off Liam's rights. It was clear even before that the business and all other assets inherited from her father could not become joint property of the spouses. Consequently, in case of divorce, this part would remain in Amanda's hands and would not be subject to dispute. But Liam naively assumed that he could access the dividends, buy new properties and assets, and so on. And of course, he wanted to have legal rights to do so in case of divorce. The contract, drafted by a top-notch lawyer, eliminated this possibility for Liam. But he reasoned that this marriage was still extremely advantageous for him. He could rummage through his wife's pockets without control and eventually accumulate capital for the future. He would slowly take money from the joint budget and transfer it to his name, as the prenuptial agreement balanced the rights and interests. The bank accounts opened in the spouse's name were also not considered jointly acquired property. And here, Liam wasn't so lucky. Justin was exceptionally loyal, honest, and responsible. He controlled Amanda's financial flows, not only in business, but also in her personal finances. Liam was left with very modest sums for his personal expenses. Sometimes the amounts were even less than what he was used to in the pre-marriage days. But Liam decided not to despair and see how the situation would develop in the future and in whose favor the final score of the game would be. It turned out that patience was indeed a virtue worth having. From the very first day of marriage, Amanda desperately tried to get pregnant. She wanted to be a mother, but each new cycle brought bitterness and disappointment. Initially, she attributed everything to nerves and stress and the accelerated pace of life she had been subjected to. Taking over the business and learning on the go naturally took its toll. More than a year of unsuccessful attempts forced the girl to finally consult specialists, undergo a complete medical examination, and find the cause of the failures. It turned out that all Amanda attributed to the frenetic lifestyle were symptoms and warning signs. Her body was warning her that she had a problem, but she ignored it. In the end, the doctors gave a grim diagnosis. She had been diagnosed with cancer. She spent 2 years undergoing treatment and suffering in her home country and then abroad. But all that yielded minimal results, with relapses to the previous state and sometimes even worsening. For almost 2 years, Amanda had been treated while Liam nominally played the role of a loving husband. His personal interest was simply that Amanda wouldn't survive. Apparently, he couldn't hide it well enough. Neither she nor he spoke openly about it, but Amanda knew about his countless affairs with other women. There were no secrets or revelations for her. Liam, on the other hand, seemed to think he was still very skilled at deception and manipulation. He excelled in the role of the husband of a dying wife, and no one knew about his affairs. He believed that his lucky star had found him again, that he just had to endure a little longer, and a golden key would be in his pocket. Literally, golden. However, everyone commented on Liam's behavior, from the nurses and caregivers in the hospitals where Amanda stayed, to Justin. He tried to open her eyes and showed her photos of Liam with other women. "What are you waiting for? Get a divorce. Don't you see what he's doing?" The man was simply indignant with his impotent fury. He couldn't understand this desperate desire of the woman to keep the marriage when she was about to die. This topic was terrifying to him. He didn't want to further traumatize his dear goddaughter. It was very painful for everyone, but when he realized that Amanda knew everything about her husband's behavior, he stopped holding back. He was perplexed, listening to the girl's calm and firm voice in response. He also feared addressing out loud a crucial legal detail. Amanda didn't have a will. Her only first-order heir was her husband. This scoundrel would inherit everything. It couldn't be denied that Justin's efforts were also a pity. So much work turned to dust. He understood that this husband would squander the entire fortune in a few years. Justin couldn't find peace with this injustice, but couldn't go against his conscience and speak openly to his goddaughter. Everyone knew that this conversation would no longer be a preventive measure at this point. It was no secret that there was no chance. Amanda was dying, and it would happen very soon. The countdown was in weeks. Liam was already rubbing his hands knowingly. His eyes gleamed with the anticipation of getting rid of his sick wife and acquiring substantial capital. He thought everything would go in his favor. Justin prayed he wouldn't have to bring up the topic of making the will himself. Fortunately, it wasn't necessary. Amanda initiated the conversation herself. Shocked by the story his goddaughter told, he didn't expect such well-thought-out steps, so much cunning and such cold calculation. Truly, revenge is a dish best served cold. Amanda had internalized this maxim and made it a reality. What she came up with would require a lot of effort and time on her part, but at the end of her journey on this earth, she fulfilled all her dreams and hopes. This conversation between the goddaughter and her second father remained a secret to all outsiders. Naturally, the traitor and fraudster Liam was not part of this circle. He learned everything at the end, when nothing could be changed. Unfortunately, no miracle occurred, although until the last moment Amanda's close ones hoped, everyone except her husband, although it was doubtful if he could be called a close person. Amanda passed away. The funeral and memorial service had already been meticulously organized and planned by the deceased herself. She calmly and decisively made the plans, dictated her final wishes, and expressed her last will. The woman was calm and resolute. The day after the farewell ceremony, the notary called the people Amanda mentioned in her will and asked them to come for its reading. It turned out that Amanda had written a will and kept it secret. No one knew its contents, not even the notary, and it would be a surprise for everyone. Only a note to the notary was opened, indicating the list of people who should be present at the reading and on what day after her death the will of the deceased would be announced. This call surprised Liam. He was convinced that his wife hadn't prepared any official documents in case of her death, and that the husband would become her sole heir, as commonly established by law in such cases. Still expecting the best, he went to the appointment with his new lover, the beautiful Patricia. He thought it would be a very effective show of confidence. He would spit in the face of everyone present and in the face of his deceased wife. Regardless of the will's text, he couldn't afford to leave humiliated and dishonored, especially since he had nothing to lose. If Amanda left him her property, the fact of having a lover and the immoral behavior of the husband wouldn't change anything. He thought he was clever and wise, having considered all possibilities and covering his tracks. It turned out that the deceased wife was wiser. Liam arrived at the meeting with Patricia. It was a closed room where several people had already gathered. Seeing Justin didn't surprise him, but what shocked him was seeing the family friend. More precisely, Amanda's childhood friend, Alex. The horror was that he didn't come alone. He came with a stroller containing a very young child, judging by the clothes, a boy. Liam hadn't heard of Alex getting married or having a child. Liam, of course, didn't qualify for any advanced titles, but he wasn't completely foolish either. His heart skipped a beat, and he understood that the situation was about to worsen. Nothing happening here was accidental, and they had outwitted him. However, he still needed to keep his composure, having already arrived. Curiosity also tormented him. He really wanted to know what Amanda had come up with, although it was already clear it was something extremely humiliating for him. The situation intensified. Suddenly, it was revealed that there was a will, its secret announcement, and a small child in the room. For about 30 minutes, all the present sat silently in different corners of the room. No one approached anyone. The climax was initiated by Amanda's will. Justin, her godfather, and Alex Davis, Amanda's childhood friend, who arrived at such a strange event in the company of a baby in a stroller. The child looked around curiously and seemed happy to be there. He was the only one who seemed satisfied with the company. Liam and Patricia were also in the room. Of course, Patricia didn't call Amanda, and the notary was present strictly at Liam's initiative. He suspected they would ask his girlfriend to leave to ensure complete confidentiality of the procedure. But the old notary, who arrived precisely on time, didn't mention a word about the presence of strangers in the room who should leave. As Liam later assumed, this was done deliberately to humiliate him even more. The notary seemed to be intentionally prolonging the introductory part, explaining why they had gathered and how, with great honor, he was announcing the last will of the deceased. At this moment, Liam understood from the malicious smile that never left Justin's face, and Alex's fixed gaze on the floor that the will's contents were a secret only to him. The elderly man read the introductory part and the preamble of the document in a long and torturous manner. But when he finally reached the most important part, he started again with the obvious and mundane. Amanda had written the will, hoping to engage the audience and provoke their reactions, so there was nothing surprising or unexpected in it. However, Liam was already very nervous, and it was noticeable to everyone around. To begin with, the notary described the deceased's last wish regarding her godfather, Justin Ford, for quite some time. Everything mentioned in the will referred to his role in the company and the obligation of any successor to keep him in a leadership position until he decided to leave on his own. Understandable and fair, in general. Only this part was written by Amanda on 3 sheets, and the elderly man read it tediously, insistently, and, as a result, very slowly. Liam's impatience multiplied by the notary's turtle pace. Finally, the climax of the text reached Liam's ears. The elderly man read, "To my lawful husband, Liam Crespo, I revoke the right to receive the inheritance." After reading this modest and concise note, the reader looked intently at Liam, as if asking if he understood the essence of what was said. The humiliated husband had no choice but to nod. He had already mentally prepared and decided this would be the reaction he would publicly express. Patricia took his hand and tried to stand up to leave demonstratively, but Liam held her in place. She looked at him inquisitively, but the man ignored her. He would also like to leave the place of his public humiliation as soon as possible. However, the performance wasn't over yet, and the invited spectator wanted to see it through to the end. After a pause, the notary continued, "All my assets at the time of my death, regardless of their composition or location, I bequeath to my only son, Robert X. Until he reaches the age of majority, I appoint his father, Alex X, and Justin Ford as guardians and administrators of the assets of his father. All necessary documents are attached to the text of the will." It was a low blow. It seemed to have physically hurt Liam. "What? A son of Alex?" His patience snapped, and an astonished cry burst out. This news surprised no one except Liam and Patricia. It was natural if one was the father and the other had signed documents accepting to be the guardian of a minor. Liam suspected his wife would throw something at him, but where did this child come from? He could safely say she wasn't pregnant. The child looked no more than a year old. He could have been responsible as a husband, but he would have definitely noticed a pregnant belly. "Is this Alex's biological son?" he asked loudly and at random. By this time, the notary had already deviated significantly from announcing the main heir and had begun explaining procedural details. The loud cry immediately interrupted the elderly man, and everyone present, without looking away, stared at Amanda's husband. "Yes, Robert is Amanda and Alex's biological son," said Justin. "She wasn't pregnant in the last 2 years. It wasn't possible." Liam clung desperately to a straw, although he himself understood that with new technologies, it was completely unnecessary. "The possibilities of medicine today are simply amazing," smiled the godfather. It was evident that Liam's shock and disappointment deeply satisfied him. "We didn't have intimacy with Amanda." Alex's comment was entirely unnecessary and ruined all the malicious joy the godfather had expressed. But it was Amanda who chose Alex as the child's father because he was incredibly educated, honest, kind, and just. He couldn't help but clarify that Amanda had been faithful to her husband and hadn't broken her vows until the end. "I don't care," Liam shouted in rage. He didn't curse as he had planned, but looked at the little one, who continued to curiously observe the people around him and watch their behavior. Alex's words deeply hurt him. Despite the husband's horrible characteristics, this comparison still stung. It was extremely unpleasant to realize how much of a scoundrel he was and how much he had hurt his wife, if this was her revenge. Liam's shout plunged everyone present into their own thoughts. The man himself reflected on his life and behavior. His companion desperately gathered the pieces, thinking she wouldn't be the wife of a rich widower. The notary, accustomed to such dramatic clashes, only thought of himself. Justin and Alex, on the other hand, were immersed in their memories of the day that brought them to this room. The young man recalled with horror the news he received 2 years ago that his best friend was sick and that the doctors practically gave her no chance of recovery. He was also struck by how calmly the young woman reasoned about how much time she had left and what she had to achieve. At that time, she told her best friend she wanted to be a mother, despite everything. "Can you handle it?" Alex asked naively. "Of course, not alone. But I arranged for my eggs to be taken before starting treatment. They immediately warned me that there was a high probability I wouldn't have to raise my own child. But I insisted, Alex. I grew up without a mother myself. It's not easy, I know, but I always felt her love. I felt she was close and loved me very much, protecting me." "Is Liam willing to raise the child alone?" the friend cautiously asked in response. "Who would allow it? He would be happy just to become the guardian and spend the child's money. He has no conscience. No, I already understand that my dear husband, frankly speaking, is a person with questionable human qualities. That's putting it mildly. And his reaction to my diagnosis and prognosis, oh, I don't even want to talk about it. This person is not worth getting angry about. But what about the child? That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Amanda hesitated, which was unusual for her. Normally she wasn't shy at all. "I don't know how to discuss this delicately. Maybe there's no way to do it. In general, I'd like you to be the father of my child," the woman hurriedly said. "Are you joking?" Alex was clearly unprepared for such a turn. "You have a husband." The man was simply stunned and fell into a stupor. Alex wasn't at all prepared for this proposal and didn't understand where his best friend, Amanda, was taking him. "Yes, I have a husband, and that will remain so until my death. I've already decided that with certainty." Alex generally didn't understand where she was going with this and remained silent until a specific proposal was made. "Alex, of course we won't do it. It's useless in my current state. Unfortunately, I can no longer carry the child myself. I asked for my eggs to be recovered, and now we need the biological material of the future father. Voila! The doctors will work their magic, and there will be a child. Of course, A woman is needed to carry and give birth to the baby, but those services are also available now. Can you tell me a little more about this magical thing? The man tried to joke to lighten the mood. I'm serious with you, Amanda immediately protested. At first it seemed absurd, the ravings of a desperate woman. However, in her mind, there was a complete and rather logical plan, which she shared enthusiastically. It turned out she had done a tremendous amount of preliminary work by the time of the conversation. She learned everything about the legal aspects, arranged services with a reproductive clinic, and even pre-selected a surrogate mother for the future child. Alex, understand that I would have used donor services, but I need a father for the child. It's no secret to me that I won't be able to see the baby's birth, but I really want to leave something behind, a part of me. It's worth considering who will stay with this child. I thought a lot, but besides you, I have no one to trust. And I'm sure, after knowing you for so many years, you'll be a wonderful father. I understand that the fate of a single father is not enviable, but I don't know how to ask you without pressuring you. Everything I want to tell you might corner you, and I don't want that. Maybe you want to start a family, get married, and have children naturally. It's logical, but please think about it. Don't answer me right away. For me, after Liam broke my heart, it's crucial to know that money doesn't mean anything to the father of my child, and that everything I have goes to him, as I got it from my father so that it wouldn't be looted or appropriated by unscrupulous people. Now I'm not as foolish as I was before marrying Liam. He taught me a lot, and now I have colossal life experience. Thanks again to Justin for making me insist on a prenuptial agreement. Otherwise, it's hard to imagine how it would be now. But thanks to my godfather, all the money is mine, and Liam doesn't have access to it, nor will he. Sorry, that was another argument for why I chose you. You don't need money at all. You have plenty of it. My father. The man interrupted for the first time, adjusting Amanda's reasoning. You know that they'll end up with you. You work day and night to make the family business thrive. If you never needed anything, now I know for sure that a well-fed person doesn't understand hunger. Someone who grew up in poverty never thinks about a piece of bread, especially if upbringing and decency are also struggles. There will be problems. And that's why I left, added the woman sadly. Honestly, I'm completely confused. I imagined the process of becoming a father differently, Amanda. And indeed, I never wanted to apply the status of a single father to myself. I guess everything said today must be kept secret. Absolutely correct. I must ask for your permission to consult my parents. Amanda protested with gestures, but Alex didn't give her a chance to express her indignation out loud. Amanda, you've known my parents since childhood. They'll find out about this. Understand me. I can't make such a decision alone. I can't and don't want to take on so much responsibility. It's a child, a baby. It won't be enough to have just a nanny if you're not there. I'll need the help of close people. You don't have them. Let's discard that option immediately. But I do. I need to inform them and ask their opinion. Amanda yielded. She had nothing substantial to object to. She only begged him to swear that the information wouldn't be disclosed further. Alex could promise that. The conversation with the parents was very difficult. The father accepted everything said neutrally, stating he would support any decision and back his son. Naturally, he would help his grandchild as much as he could. The mother wasn't so liberal. Like all mothers, she wanted a normal and happy family for her son, for him to marry a good girl and have children together. She felt infinite pity for Amanda. She had known her since childhood in the best way, but it was very hard to accept this request. She couldn't reconcile with the fact that the potential mother of her grandchild was dying and that a stranger would carry and give birth to the child. Can the illness be transmitted to the child? The woman was afraid to ask this question. It was terrible and uncomfortable, out of place. But what else could she do? This was her grandchild. She had to ensure nothing threatened him. Overcoming her nature, she asked what Alex's father was also ashamed to ask. Almost immediately, she said there was no hereditary form of the disease, and the biological material was thoroughly examined. This calmed the anxious mother a bit, but not completely. Nothing was going as she would have liked. It wasn't typical at all. Such uncertainty was very frightening. However, after thinking, she supported her son and said she would absolutely accept any decision Alex made. And, of course, she would spoil the child and help in any way she could. He would be her grandchild. There couldn't be any other way. Alex himself hesitated for a long time. Who could make such a decision easily? Amanda's proposal shocked him. After much internal turmoil, he decided there was no sense in refusing. After all, what could one regret about the birth of their own child? When he announced his agreement to Amanda, she was simply delighted. The following week, they began gradually implementing their plan. While Alex sat and recalled the entire story that radically changed his life, Justin remembered the conversation Amanda initiated just over 2 months ago. The godfather came to visit her in the hospital, as usual, and at first, nothing foretold anything unusual. Quite unexpectedly, his goddaughter took the bull by the horns and told him they needed to have a serious conversation. They had to discuss something important. Starting from afar, she said she considered Justin a second father and hoped he wouldn't reject her. The man listened in silence, trying to understand where she was going. Amanda, it seemed, had been preparing for the conversation for a long time, contemplating how to carry it out. But at the last moment, emotions took over, and pausing melodramatically, Amanda blurted out that she wanted him to formalize the documents to become her child's guardian. At first, the man thought his goddaughter was delirious. What the hell? Did she have a child? Reading something reflecting internal distrust and doubts about his sanity, the young woman began explaining confusedly. Listening to the whole story, the godfather was shocked. Not only had Amanda and Alex decided to take such a desperate step, but they had also kept it a secret for so long. How old is Robert now? He turned 8 months old 4 days ago. The goddaughter smiled. Can I meet him? Of course. Why do you ask? Amanda called Alex and asked him to bring their son. 2 hours later, the 4 of them sat in the hospital room silently. Everyone looked at the baby. You know how to surprise. The man couldn't recover from the shock. While Alex and Robert were on their way to the hospital, Justin had a detailed conversation with Amanda. It was then that she revealed all her cards and all her plans for the future. She remained married to Liam only to teach him a lesson. It would have been easier to divorce. By law, there's a presumption of paternity. If I'm married to Liam, they should automatically have registered him as the father of my child. Everyone told us there were no options, and later we would have to dispute paternity in court. Fortunately, Alex's father took care of that and found competent lawyers who put everything in order. The situation is atypical. We had all the medical documents confirming paternity, so they agreed to cooperate. Going to court would have ruined all the plans. I don't want Liam to find out about the child until after my death. In general, he will learn everything when the notary reads the will. We've already decided how it will be drafted and what it will contain. We've included all the documents and I've signed everything, but one aspect remains unresolved. Robert will soon have only one father. It will happen at any moment, so Alex will be his only father. Now, I've reconsidered a lot in life and don't want to depend on luck. Alex has parents, and if something happens to him, Robert will be with them. But I want you to have rights, too, just in case. I even have to think about the business and the conditions under which Robert will inherit everything. For the solitary Justin, life revolved around work and Amanda. Her illness affected him deeply. He had no doubts. He agreed with everything the young woman asked. She was closer and dearer to him than anyone else, and after the death of her friend, her father, even more so. The only thing that worried him was anticipating provocations from Liam. Knowing people well, he felt that facing him at this moment wasn't the right strategy. It would be better to confront him later. Although he deserved it, no one denied that. Amanda, are you sure it's wise to treat your husband this way? He's a despicable person. Why involve yourself with him? Why seek revenge from beyond the grave? He stopped immediately. Do you understand what I mean? I apologize if... Stop. I've been thinking about this for 2 years. I saw Robert born. I saw how Alex loves him and how his parents love the little one. I don't need anything else. I've accepted it. Don't worry. Say what you think. At this moment, I'm more annoyed by those who talk about mystical recovery and healing. As for Liam, I loved him so much and believed in him, and he's just the worst ungrateful trash. He comes to the hospital as if it were a prison, and his lovers bring him here. Did you know that? The man nodded silently with bitterness. Everyone around whispered about it. Liam had stopped hiding his affairs a long time ago. Forgive and forget? No way. He loves money above all, and that's how I'll punish him. Let him build his castles in the air. Nothing will be left of the will and Robert until the end. It will be a surprise for him. Do you see? I hid everything from you. It was very difficult. I wanted to introduce you to my son right away, but I was very cautious so that no one would accidentally find out and tell Liam. Let this be our goodbye. I wrote him a letter. The notary will read it. Justin sat and reflected on that conversation with Amanda. It happened almost 2 months ago, and since then he had tried to dissuade her several times. It seemed like a very bad idea to him, but she stood firm, and he had to yield. After all, it was her last will, and he needed to treat it with respect. During the sudden silence that fell in the notary's office, everyone was lost in their thoughts, and Liam, more precisely Amanda's mother, cursed her at every possible occasion. People like him could never understand that the blame could have been on themselves. The behavior of others could be a completely logical response, but it was too complicated. Why look for a problem within oneself? Liam stood there, looming over the table in the prolonged pause. Curiously, Patricia broke the silence. She tried to tug at her lover's elbow to take him outside, but he wasn't going to leave. He hadn't finished, hadn't said everything. He was only interested in the money, and he saw no sense in hiding it. Addressing the notary, he asked a question. Won't I receive anything? The mandatory part, or whatever it's called? I'm her husband. The man complained, waving his rights. Even Patricia flinched. He behaved this way without mentioning the others. Only the old notary, for whom such behavior was familiar and expected, wasn't surprised at all. According to the article naming the people entitled to a mandatory share later, you're not included. Moreover, I carefully studied your prenuptial contract. Its text is right here. The elderly man smacked his chubby hands on the thick folder in front of him. You have no chance in court, although, of course, you have the right to appeal. If you disagree, you can try to contest the will. Of course, I will contest it. It's not even clear whose child that she named as her son really is, Liam said, without thinking. Alex barely restrained himself from standing up and confronting Amanda's arrogant husband. Even the usually calm and composed Justin suddenly blushed with anger. The notary remained as calm as a cucumber. Nothing surprised him. Everything was within the framework of a normal working day. He replied calmly, "Here's not only the child's birth certificate, but also medical documents providing exhaustive answers to questions about his birth. Moreover, in terms of inheritance, at the request of the deceased, the results of a DNA test are included. The research confirms that your wife is Robert Davis's biological mother. I can warn you immediately that the entire set of documents is completely prepared for all eventualities. Can I see it?" Liam wanted to see it with his own eyes. "No, you can only familiarize yourself with the part that personally concerns you. All other documents, especially those related to a child, can only be revealed with the father's consent." "I don't give my permission, of course." Alex instantly raised his voice. "Then, Liam, only in case of a legal dispute, if the court deems it necessary to request these documents." This finally crushed Liam. He stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him and shouting that he wouldn't let it rest. His companion turned out to be more composed and polite. She bid farewell and left, closing the door calmly behind her. "Is it okay that this fool didn't sign what was read to him in the text of the will?" Justin asked the notary. "There are many people like him. Don't worry, it's just a formality," the elderly man reassured him. "Can we leave? Robert wanted to go to the circus and see the animals. I think he's had enough for now. It would be funny if it weren't so sad. How could Amanda get involved with him?" The godfather was puzzled by what he had seen, and the question was rhetorical. The men signed the necessary documents where required, shook hands, and went their separate ways. Justin helped Alex take Robert and lower the stroller. "Will you come with us? I want to take a short walk and get some fresh air. The little one needs it too." "Of course, I'll join." For a while, they walked side by side in silence, listening to the stroller's wheels whisper as they carried the peacefully sleeping baby. "Do you think Amanda would be happy with how I'm handling things?" Alex finally asked the question that was troubling him. "I'm sure she would be. You're an excellent father. It's evident that you and he are one in everything," the godfather encouraged him. "Honestly, something else worries me. I think Amanda shared this with you. I tried to dissuade her from what just happened." "You mean this joke with the will and how Robert found out?" Bustino remained silent and simply nodded. "Of course she talked about it," Alex replied. "I brought up this topic constantly myself. I didn't like the idea from the beginning. He's a despicable, bitter and mercenary person. Why provoke him? Honestly, I even had the impulse to tell him when the baby was born. But Amanda kept it a secret. I thought I had no right to do it, so I convinced myself she simply didn't want to deal with him personally and left these disputes in our hands. And today, I saw him with that woman. He had no qualms. Now, I'm not sure if it was the right thing to do." His reaction and expression were like a turtle walking. Horrible. I should have gotten rid of him sooner, especially since I read the prenuptial contract. We could have gotten rid of him in a second. And now I have to go and literally, as a representative of the heir, take all the possessions, the car, and evict him from the apartment. I don't want to see him. I think Amanda didn't want to either. That also played a role. She wanted revenge because she loved him, so he wouldn't say anything afterward. She loved him so much, and this damn love found no other outlet. My poor girl. The man wiped away a tear. Don't be sad for her, please. She just wanted all the love we had for her to be directed towards Robert. Alex consoled the godfather, patting him on the back. While the men spoke of their concerns and wallowed in memories, Liam and Patricia observed them from the car and discussed the same topic. So, "You really won't get anything at all?" the girl asked, batting her eyelashes incredulously. "How stupid you are." I said, "No chance at all because of this brat." "Okay, let's go. We at least need to collect something valuable and manage to take it to my apartment." 3 days later, when Alex finally gathered the courage to go to Amanda's house, there was no one there. He had prepared for a tough confrontation, even bringing security personnel to avoid unnecessary trouble. However, Liam understood everything correctly and had already moved out. Of course, not without his own benefit. He took numerous valuable items from the house that could be considered personal. In other words, Alex tried to maintain some legality regarding Amanda's belongings. Liam sat in his small kitchen in the apartment he inherited from his parents, sipping bitterness. Patricia had left him. Why would she want to date a guy without money? Liam reflected on how he had reached this point. In the past, they used to pay him, and now a young and beautiful girl took money to be with him. Of course, the not-so-young and degraded playboy blamed everyone but himself for his misfortunes. In his version of events, his ex-wife was responsible for everything that had happened. She had drained all his life force and ultimately ruined him with the inheritance. He had hoped the money would instantly turn him into a successful businessman with a bunch of assets. Facing such a loss wasn't easy. As Amanda aptly told Alex, Liam was building castles in the air. Indeed, he had built them. In his fantasies, he was young, handsome, successful, and very rich. Because of her, he lost everything. It turned out he wasn't as young or attractive as before, as Patricia vividly demonstrated when she left. In her farewell, she said many pleasant things. He wasn't wanted, a broke drunk who fancied himself a playboy. After her departure, Liam was horrified to realize that this was true. Everything she said wasn't out of spite or to offend. His former lover was simply telling the truth because pretending was utterly useless. To the guilt of his ex-wife was added the fact that he couldn't be successful and rich now. The possibility of becoming a successful businessman collapsed like a house of cards. Liam spent almost 2 weeks of his life in a continuous drunken stupor. He wanted to escape reality. The shattered crystal dream tore him apart. Coping with that pain was extremely difficult. Like a typical infantile egotist, he saw no fault in himself for what had happened. The root of all problems and the embodiment of all demonic creatures was his deceased wife. When he married her, he was the dream of any well-off lady, but he became a vagabond because of his wife. He constantly tangled himself and convinced himself that Amanda was to blame for everything. Naturally, with each passing day, the intensity of his hatred increased. In one of the morning hangover attacks, Liam finally decided that enough was enough. This method wouldn't lead him to success and wouldn't avenge his ex-wife. According to him, she would only be happy and amused to see him dragged into the abyss of alcohol dependency. The man finally resolved to gather his strength, not drink for a few days, and then visit a legal consultation in a slightly more decent state. Suddenly, a spark of hope presented itself, showing that not everything was lost. Maybe there was some chance to get at least a small part of the inheritance. Previously, he had hoped for the entire fortune, but now he would be happy with a modest help. Liam felt deeply humiliated when, a few days ago, people from Justin came to his house. They almost forcibly took the car keys and tore up the power of attorney issued by Amanda. One of the guys stated, "Didn't you know that a power of attorney loses its legal force after the death of the person who issued it?" Liam felt despised and morally destroyed. Someone gave him a sip to make him talk about where he had hidden Amanda's jewelry. At that moment, he certainly felt no guilt. He didn't think for a second that he had done anything wrong. In essence, by stealing his wife's jewelry from the house, he thought they rightfully belonged to him. and he had the right to have at least something. After all, he put up with his wife for almost 3 years. He believed he had the right to some compensation. In his own eyes, Liam painted his own portrait as an almost saintly figure who never strayed from his sick wife's bedside. In those moments, he forgot the endless intrigues, gambling addiction, alcohol, and his negligent attitude towards his wife. This is a very convenient quality for such irresponsible egotists who only love themselves and create an impeccable image of themselves in their minds. Liam had convinced himself of his infallibility and perfection for so long that he believed it and was willing to vehemently prove it. With all these thoughts about glaring injustice and his own fairness and impeccability, he went through the detox period. It turned out he already had a desire to drink, which unpleasantly surprised Liam. He desperately wanted to drink, but clung to the idea he repeatedly convinced himself of how good he was and how unjustly he was treated. He should have stood up and fought for himself, defending his legitimate rights and interests. When this message that he needed help and sympathy decided to seek a consultation, the kind young woman nodded sympathetically, seemingly totally on his side. However, when it came to advising the client, she firmly stated that there were no options. Understand, you signed this prenuptial agreement yourself. It was drafted exceptionally professionally and meticulously. You can't claim any property in the marriage. This is if we talk about assigning any part of the inheritance that would be due to you under the joint property regime. But here, there's nothing to assign. There was no such regime. It was excluded by this prenuptial agreement. What about the inheritance? The notary at the will reading told me I'm not among the heirs entitled to a mandatory share. It's true for the heirs entitled to a mandatory share in the inheritance. The law clearly names the list of such persons. It's closed, and you really aren't included in it. Could my wife really make a will excluding me? Yes, absolutely. And you could have done the same. A will is designed to change the standard order set by law. It's just like a prenuptial agreement. By signing it, you altered the legal regime of joint property set by law. A will changes the order of inheritance set by law. Without a will, you would inherit alongside her child. She changed this with her final will. Can I contest this? You can try, but there's no chance. I'm being honest and straightforward. There are no grounds to invalidate this will. What about the prenuptial agreement? Liam asked, hopeful. Same situation. No hidden clauses, just standard language business people use to protect their assets. My professional opinion, don't waste your nerves and money on pointless lawsuits. I understand. His last hopes crumbled before him. Let me get this straight. You said if there were no will, inheritance follows the law. In this case, heirs are called in a specific order. First, those in the first order, and if they aren't available, then those in the second, and so on. Specifically here, your wife had no parents, so you, the spouse, and the child are considered. Hence, the two of you would have split the entire inheritance between yourselves. The girl patiently explained the details. Each order of inheritance has a clear list of individuals. For the first order, it includes parents, children, and the spouse of the deceased. What happens if the heir named in the will dies? It depends on whether they die before or after the will is read, meaning after the testator's death. Is that significant? Extremely important. If the named heir in the will dies before it's read, and there's no alternate heir mentioned, the will is void and everything goes according to the law. If they die after the will is read, there's something called testamentary transmission. Basically, if the named heir in the will dies after the testator's death, the heirs of this second deceased person will inherit. I'm confused. Can you put it in simpler terms? Basically, in your case, if your late wife's child were to pass away right now, her legal father would inherit all her property as he is her only immediate heir. How can that be? Liam yelled, his anger boiling over. That's what the law says. The legal consultant stepped back from the table, startled by Liam's intense reaction. It's absolutely true. If you don't believe me, I can call my colleagues and show you the document. No, it's not necessary. His rage turned into a bitter feeling of despair. After paying at the cashier, he stormed out, slamming the door loudly. Can't these damn lawyers speak in plain language? Explain things properly, Liam raged to himself, unable to accept the situation. He didn't seek blame. This time it was the girl's fault for simply telling him his chances. Of course, in Liam's mind, the main culprit who ruined his life was Amanda. She was to blame for everything. Why did she give birth to this damn child? He fumed. And if she needed him so much, I should have been the father. Vile woman. He didn't understand why she acted that way, or why she wanted someone else, not her husband, to be the father of her child. His current behavior vividly illustrated why Amanda had been right. Liam's anger consumed him from the inside out. It manifested outward and returned to him, burning everything in its path. Alex, unaware of his opponent's emotional state, was at the playground with Robert, who was happily playing in a stroller. They were followed by Justin, who slowly pushed the stroller. Justin kept an eye on them. He decided that Amanda's not-so-clever plan was pointless. The man internally confirmed it once more, reaching the same conclusion as before. Nothing good would come from dragging that person into life, even indirectly involving him in the inheritance. The notary reading the will was just a formality, needed only for their own peace of mind. What if it didn't happen? Liam, a sly and cunning person, would get lucky, and these circumstances turned him into a joke and a failed businessman, with alcohol as his closest friend. Alex looked at Robert, then at his father-in-law. It was clear who Robert's father was. The child looked up with a questioning expression. The godfather walked closer. I'm sure Amanda would be proud of how you're handling things. She left a wonderful heir, Alex said. We're managing well. I just hope that monster stays away. I'm here to help, Justin assured. Alex smiled. You always have been, and I'm grateful. Let's make sure Amanda's wishes are honored completely.